Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of our Opolis Inc. Modpack playthrough. Hope today's going swell and well for you so far. As for me, well, I guess you could say I have a lot in store for you today. Get it? Because applied energistics is storage. Anyways, on with the episode. So yes, as mentioned probably many a times in this series, we finally got into Applied Energistics 2 in between episodes. And so most of what we'll be doing today is going through how we're using Applied Energistics 2, what I think to be the best way for you to use it, and a couple of recipe tweaks that are really huge as far as making it pretty simple. Outside of that, I don't think we've done all too much. I do have the free runners now from Mechanism. A lot of you had commented and said that these do allow you to prevent fall damage. So obviously we already have the jetpack, now we have the free runners. You can make the base ones like such. So all very obtainable. And then the armored free runners, you just take the base ones, add in some diamond dust, bronze, and steel, and you're good to go. These take power, not hydrogen, so you can charge them in your solar generators or whatever. Outside of that, we've made some progress on the farming over here. This was probably honestly a lot of the work that happened in between episodes, but most of it was boring work, like standing here watering crops and harvesting them until I had enough Imperium, or what is Imperium, right? Now I'm questioning myself. What's it called? Inferium. Close enough. So until I had enough Inferium basically to do this. So every single block now has at least the Inferium growth accelerator. Some of them have the Prudentium ones, just the ones that we had from before. Now, I went through and read the documentation for Mystical Agriculture so we get to the bottom of how these growth accelerators work. So I'm going to try and explain that first and foremost so we can all be on a base level understanding and everyone knows how they should be setting up their farms, what's important, and what is hogwash. So for the growth accelerators, every tier accelerates the plant at the same amount. So whether it's Inferium or Awakened Supremium, it accelerates the plant at the same amount. The only difference is the range at which it works. So I can put Awakened Supremium 54 blocks down below a crop, right? A patch of soil, whatever the heck you want to call it, and it will still work. However, if I put Inferium on the spot right beside it, and we just have one of each of these, they're going to affect the blocks above them the same amount. Does that make sense? They're going to increase the tick growth the same amount for each of these. So the only difference is how far it works. That being said, that means that you can also use them in tandem. So your first 9 don't have to be whatever the rest of the stack is. Similarly, I believe, I'm not going to say this 100% because I did not test it, but it does seem like it should be the truth. If I was to remove all these, go down 54 blocks, I could place, or 45, I guess, I could place a Supremium and it would still work. We're not going to do that because that's a little backwards. So what we'll do instead is grow each tier as we can, which should be getting pretty close to adding another one. Because we've also upgraded our machine to have the Supremium machine upgrade. Now this takes about 5,000 Inferium to do, so unless you can produce a fair amount, I don't really recommend going for this, but it does make it to where everything that grows gets harvested at a fair speed, because honestly, one of the bigger problems with things growing faster is that your harvester doesn't work as quick as they grow. So you'll have a full field and it will kind of slowly be moving through. Now there's 2 options for this. You can have a lot of harvesters and not go as high on the machine upgrade, or you can go higher on the machine upgrade and then accommodate it thusly so. So instead of using 1 solar generator, we now have 2, because I do believe with just 1 it would run out. mostly due to how fast it's going through. And every time it harvests a crop, it uses energy. So if my crops are growing slower, probably could use one. If it wasn't harvesting as quickly, probably could use one. But because of the combination of how quickly it's harvesting crops and how quickly the crops are growing, we need at least 2 solar generators. Now, the reason I'm putting so much importance on mystical agriculture is I believe that it is going to be the best method, ultimately, for resource generation. So you can see here, we already have a lot of our applied Energistics 2 stuff. We have Certs quartz, I think this is silicone. We have redstone, iron, fluix, right? For fluix dust and all that. Regular quartz, so we don't have to go flying through the nether, solium. So like things that would typically either be harder to get or I need large amounts of, right? One thing I will say with mystical agriculture is you still have to process things. So if you take a look at iron essence, which obviously you get from the iron plant and all that, and making it's not very difficult. We'll go through the seeds here in just a minute. But you can't just craft it into iron like you can in standard packs. You still have to put it into a solidifier with some molten stone. So kind of backwards of what you do the other way, where you put the stone in and then you put in molten iron. Works kind of the same way. So 18 iron essence will give you 1 iron ore, and then of course you can take that and put it into a combiner to get you your raw iron and process it further on. So eventually we'll get into automating all of those, like the straight through, but for the time being, we're just kind of happily sitting with our systems the way they are. That being said, we have added a bit more down here as well, and we'll be getting into all of that as well, because most of it's just like single-use machines, like the precision sawmill, so we can get sawdust, which I literally just threw down and threw a stack of logs in so we could have this ready for the episode. I don't believe anything else, actually. Well, I mean, the energy acceptor, but this is all applied Energistics too, and I'm going to explain that all in one go, so it's understandable, right? But I have been using this whole duplication method that I mentioned in the last video to just continue to bolster our items as needed. So, all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at the quest book, because we have made some progress. I don't typically like to do it off camera, but I wanted to get the ME drive for a very specific reason, and I think you'll understand why when we get into this. And I'm not going to explain Applied Energistics 2 right now. I'm just going to explain in partial why I wanted the ME drive. So, there is... Oh, it's getting nighttime. Let's go ahead and go sleep, and then we'll dive into all this in the morning. Okay, so the reason I wanted the ME drive is because there's a specific drive that has been added to Applied Energistics, rather Extended AE is the mod that it's a part of, called the ME Infinity Cobblestone Cell. Kinda as its name implies, with Infinity Cobblestone, it is infinite cobblestone. Literally infinite. So the reason I need the drive is so that way I could access this inventory, this cobblestone cell, essentially. And there are different ways you could do it. I suppose an ME chest would work as well, but the drive is purchasable, so it is the quickest route, essentially, in my mind. So we got the ME drive, and then I went ahead and made an export bus with some acceleration cards and labeled cobblestone. And I'll go back through and explain all of that when we explain Applied Energistics 2. Just know that essentially this is infinite cobblestone that is being exported at, well, an incredible rate, because obviously this is staying at 2,000, even though this is constantly exporting large amounts of cobblestone. Now, I did also try this with the ultimate logistical transporter, but the market is funny in the sense that it will only fill up this first slot if you import an item type. If you import another item type, it'll fill up the second slot, and so on and so forth. However, it will never overfill first slot to second slot with the same type. Now, I guess the problem comes in the fact that the ultimate logistical transporter tries to transport too many items to the market at once, and so it doesn't end up transporting any. None at all. Even if it's completely empty, it won't transport a stack and then use a stack. Similarly, this will export various amounts, right? And so say this gets to yeah, as you can see here, it's going up by 1. Well, why is it going up by 1? Because we have a logistical sorter on it. If we didn't have the logistical sorter, it would actually sit there and would not continue to go up, because once it's inserted some cobblestone, for some reason it doesn't insert a multiple of 8, it instead inserts like 35 or 36, well, then it can't take another 35 or 36 because that would put it over a stack. So when it gets to that point, this no longer works. If I was to break this little cable right here, we'll actually see this in effect. So it's going to continue to pull these out. I guess I would have to break this as well. Now, it's at 4. We'll have to wait for it to hit one of the good numbers. Okay, so 35. Well, as you saw, it didn't change from 35 until the demand changed on how much it needed cobblestone-wise. Same thing, 37 doesn't change until the amount over here changes to hit a lower amount. So what this does is actually slows down the process at which we can do this, because it's not constantly just pumping this full of cobblestone. Whenever it hits an odd number, it has to wait for the demand to reach that number, and then it'll start sending it again. Due to me just not excuse me, wanting to be that patient, I've decided to use a logistical is that backwards? It's backwards. I do this every time. I've decided to use a logistical sorter to assist this along, meaning whenever it sits stills, or pretty much constantly, the logistical transporter, or sorter, sorry, is pulling just one thing of cobblestone. And I tried to use the min max, I tried to do all this, I could never get it to work. So if you understand how to do this on the logistical sorter, which I figured would be pretty self-explanatory, you put in the filter item, you set what you want the min and max values to be, you hit save, you can allow default. I've tried every combination of using these, it doesn't work, right? So we're just forcing single item, because I cannot get this to insert 4 cobblestone at a time or 5 cobblestone at a time, no matter what combination of settings I put this to. So I'm not sure if it's a bug. I'm not sure if I'm just completely lost on how this works. So I've just decided to turn on force single item so it constantly works. In this way, we don't have to wait for the demand to reach us. We can actually come to the demand, which makes the process go a little bit smoother. And as you can see, kind of fills us up with basic mining bucks. So now this process is infinite, and we're gaining a lot more advanced mining bucks a lot faster, which is nice because those are used to make more diamonds, more redstone, more gold, basically just duplicate our items as we need them. However, I don't want to have to keep duplicating our items, and hence where mystical agriculture comes in, saying basically, here you go, you can have tons of resources for free, but you still have to process them. Well, when we go to process them, we're still going to need the combiner, and we're still going to need bucks, even if they're just basic, but I would prefer advanced. So that's kind of the catch-22 that I was dealing with, as far as like, how do we progress on resource generation? How do we progress to a point where I can be more hands-off, we can automate it, and it can be sufficient, right? Because resource generation needs to cover the items that you need, and it also needs to be at a sufficient rate. If we're producing 1 iron every 3 hours, I'm sorry, but it's not going to cut it, right? So it needs to be sufficient. That being said, pretty much stopped working on the quarries and just purely have been working on mystical agriculture, because I believe we are getting to the point where, well, we're not going to need the quarries. I may take one into the Nether, see if it works in there. I think, sorry, sometimes my southern accent really pokes through. But I think that would be a good idea for potentially finding some netherite. That's what I was going to say. And then we're going to take a look at netherite as well, because I think it will be interesting in the future, but we'll get to that when we get to it, essentially. So just know that outside of Applied Energistics 2, basically what we did in between episodes was set ourselves up for a better resource automation. And that's mostly it. That is 90% of it. One thing I did change is from this being a chest to an ender drawer. So you'll notice that we have an extra ender drawer in here now. This is specifically for all the crops from there to be placed into this same storage system. And then once we get into 82, I'll explain how we're actually linking all of our stored items here into our terminal here, which we can craft with, as you can see. So I think we're good to actually get into AE2 now, because I don't think we can really explain anything else about what's happened without it. I've not made any power progress in between episodes. I've pretty much purely just done AE2 stuff, mystical agriculture, and resource alignment, we'll call it. So if you're looking to learn Applied Energistics 2, I would say this is both a fantastic and a terrible mod pack to do so, for two reasons. A lot of the recipes have been changed to be much easier, in a sense. Some things you just buy and you don't even have to use the recipe for, and so that again gives you kind of a skewed version of the AE2 mod. So if you're looking to learn AE2 for the sake of like how to craft stuff and what recipes are and all that, this is probably a bad mod pack. But if you're looking to learn AE2 in the sense of how to use it within a world, in a real world sense, or in a real Minecraft sense, whatever you want to call that, then I'd say this is actually probably a pretty good mod pack, because again, some things are just a bit cheaper. For example, in order to get a 4K ME storage component, typically you'll need 3 1K ME storage components to make a 4K. To make a 16K, you typically need 3 4K units, and to make a 64K, you typically need 3 16. So ultimately, you end up needing like 81 1K, ME storage components to make one 64K, which is a lot of resources, right? It requires you to make a lot of processors and all that. However, in this mod pack, it's now 1K can be upgraded to a 4K just using logic processors and redstone. The 4K can be upgraded to a 16K using glowstone and calculation processors. Glowstone, I do need to make a mystical agriculture seed for, but we can do that today when we go back to talking about that. And then a 64K can be made from a 16K, pretty much using similar things: engineering processor, glowstone, and the 16K ME storage component. So this is important because the storage components are where you actually store the items, and we'll get into all of that. But I think just in order to explain in which ways this mod is different than it normally is, I should approach that first, because it is different, right? So it's not how you're going to be accessing this mod in other mod packs. The recipes are going to be changed, and I just want you to know that. However, how the mod interacts with itself is all still the same. The functions of the mod still the same. The uses of the mod still the same. So we'll still be learning AE2 and how to use it, but the crafting recipes will be different. So let's dive into this wonderful, wonderful world of AE2. Now, we've already seen the charger, because this is what we used on our shop guy over there. This is what we used on the villager to give him the job that allowed us to trade in for the specific receipts we needed, right? Cool. We've also seen another aspect of AE2 already, and it's one that I got going so we could dive into AE2 pretty properly when I was ready. And that's going to be these crystals over here. These little Certs quartz crystals, which we have been producing, as I've shown through the damaged budding Certs quartz and skystone. Now, we already went through all of this, so we're not going to revisit that. Just know that Certs quartz crystal is pretty important as far as progression in AE2. So, taking a look at our quest book, I think might be the best way to explain how we get into this. So we have the charger, which allows us to get charged Certs quartz. That's essentially the big deal here is, oh, not the end scrapper, because you'll need charged Certs quartz for very specific recipes and all that, and we're about to get into exactly why that is. Now, in order to get into AE2, you need to finish the mystical quest line here, or kind of get into the middle of it, because you'll need Fluix seeds. You'll need Certs quartz seeds, and you'll need Certs quartz. So we went through all of this with the charger. Now, I did this off camera, but the Fluix seeds are made pretty simply. You charge the Certs quartz, which I showed you how to do with the crank and all that. Then you put some Imperium. Oh, this is Imperium. Anyway, some Imperium, block of redstone, search quartz seeds, which are not typically the seeds you put in the middle. I know they're white like the other seeds are like kind of that same color, but it's search quartz seeds in the middle. So if you're wondering why this isn't working, maybe check the seeds that you have in the middle. That gives you your fluix seeds, which of course end up giving you access to fluix essence, which you can make fluix crystals with. Again, fluix crystals and fluix dust, very important as far as Applied Energistics 2 goes. So we know what the charger's for. Gets us our charge stuff, allows us to get into fluix, and then we get the fluix crystals. Cool. We're not going to go any further past that because that's where we're at. Now, the inscriber. The inscriber can also just be bought. 32 basic storage bucks, and you have yourself an inscriber. So that's pretty self-explanatory. We don't have to go over any kind of crafting recipe. All of these machines that you see here are inscribers. Taking a look specifically, we'll just use the basic storage bucks. In the inscriber, typically, you'll be making these circuits. Some of them are calculations, some of them are engineering, some of them are just printed silicone, and some of them are logic. But typically, these are the three circuits that you'll be using: engineering, calculation, and logic. The printed silicone, think of it as kind of the base layer that will be needed for all three of these. So in the inscriber, you put in storage bucks. You can use above basic just as you can with anything else. So if we take a look at the inscriber, if I insert elite with a piece of gold, now I'm getting 4 printed logic. If I insert basic, you get 1. So same as the processing with everything else, this does increase as you increase the storage buck tier, which is pretty nifty. So then you're going to take your circuits, be it logic or any of the other ones, and you're going to put them back into the inscriber, or maybe into a new inscriber. You know, it's really dependent on your setup, but you put them into an inscriber, logic circuit, printed silicone, and this is why I say it's a base, because this printed silicone will stay the same, and redstone, and the redstone will stay the same as well, and this is what gets you your processors. Okay, cool. Well, let's look at all the other processors so you can see exactly what I mean. So calculation processor, same exact recipe, you're just changing the top to now the printed calculation circuit. Remember, this is just made using a basic storage buck, search quartz crystal, and the inscriber. Does take power, that's why you see this little bar over here, and that's why we have this thing called an energy acceptor. Because the inscriber, as well as the charger, when you're not using a hand crank on it, requires power. However, Applied Energistics 2 have been very hesitant to just allow their whole system to take RF. Instead, what they use is an energy acceptor, which can accept energy from a lot of different points, a lot of different energy types. But for our sake, for our purposes, it is accepting FE, because that is what Mechanism uses, and that's primarily what we're kind of going through. I don't know why I turned that back on. I knew it was loud. Anyways, so we're taking FE, we're converting it into AE. And so that's how all of these are powered. So if you just throw in items, it's not going to do anything. You do need to give it some power. Now, processors. Yay, we have processors. Calculation, engineering, fantastic. That's exactly what we have here. We have the circuits, we have the redstone. That should be up there. We have the circuit, we have the redstone, and we have circuit and redstone. Now, if I was to throw some silicone in there, which we're going to go take a look at that real quick, because again, pretty important resource. And we have automated it. So, silicone, how do you get silicone? Well, there's 2 ways. You can use the silicone essence, which we'll get into, or you can smelt down search quartz dust to get you a piece of silicone. Now, you really only need to do this process of smelting search quartz dust 4 times, because then you can take your silicone and your infusion from mystical agriculture back to prosperity seed, and you can get yourself some silicone seeds, which, as you probably could have guessed it, gives you silicone essence to make more silicone. So that's what our setup currently is, and this is how I'm able to get so much and push it through at any rate that I see fit, as long as I have it being produced with mystical agriculture, right? So if we throw this in here and we throw in some basic storage bucks, let's just do a nice round 24. Then you'll see this little pink bar growing. If you hover over it, it'll tell you the percentage, and bam, printed silicone. You then can take the printed silicone, insert it into any of these, and boom, bam. So hope that's pretty easy to understand, and you can shift click the ingredients in. Most of the time they go where they're supposed to, but if they don't, you can also check the crafting recipe, right? And it'll tell you, okay, circuits in the top, redstone's in the right, silicone's in the bottom. Cool. Eventually we'll get on to automating this stuff if we require large amounts of it. As of right now, I don't think that's going to be the case due to the way, you know, the crafting recipes work, but who knows? I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. So, okay, we have the base materials for everything in Applied Energistics 2 now. We have certs quartz. We can charge them. We have fluix crystals and fluix dust, which is the purple stuff. We have processors. We have circuits. We have everything, right? All the building blocks of Applied Energistics 2, basically. There are some additional ones that we'll be getting into later as we, well, get into them. So now let's look at putting all of that stuff into practical use. How do we use the processors, right? How do we use the certs quartz dust? What are we using it for? So, Applied Energistics 2. As you can see, a lot of the base ingredients are kind of already in our terminal here. And for those of you that don't understand Applied Energistics 2, just basically at its level and what its function is and why you want to use the mod, it's a storage mod that allows you to put items on disks, or in this case, item storage cells. Now, bytes, you don't need to know anything about the conversion there other than the fact that when you fill up the bytes, you can no longer put in items. Same thing with types. You can only have so many types of items within each storage cell, and I think this is to keep it from being too, you know, broken, or maybe to help with lag. I'm not sure. You know, those of us that have played with refined storage, we know that we don't really like types because it's an annoying extra feature that, you know, you don't necessarily have to deal with. But in this case, we do, and so that's perfectly fine. But just know that you can only have so many types of items in here. So if I was to throw in the configurator, now we see we're at 20 of 63 because it's another type of item. I don't want to do that because I want to keep this on my body. And now we're back to 19. So just keep an eye on how many types you're using. Now, again, getting these storage cells, fairly simple given the 64 can be made just by upgrading a 16, and you don't actually need 81 1Ks, you just need one in order to get up to the 64K. So that's really nice. That means you can have a lot of storage for relatively cheap and relatively quickly. Now, for me personally, I just don't like to dump everything into the system because then it gets all kind of muddled up and you're like, oh, what cell has what kind of types of items on it? And I don't have to track each item to each cell specifically, just so long as I know that I'm not going to overload my system, that items aren't constantly being pumped in without being dealt with in some way, shape, form, or manner. So what I typically do for my Applied Energistics 2 setups is I will run a cable. So this is just a fluix glass cable from the disk drive, and it typically will go into, if I have it available, a functional storage controller with an ME storage bus. You'll want to set the priority to high. What this essentially does, I didn't change that. Okay, cool. What this essentially does is allow your system to access that storage item and to pull and push items from it and to it. What this allows you to do is theoretically increase your storage space. So now, instead of having 63 types of items, I can have 63 types on each cell within that little disk drive, right? So 63, 63, and 63. But I can also have all these types of items. And because the priority is set to higher on the storage bus, it will always try to insert anything on this wall into the wall first before it goes onto a storage cell. So if I run over here and let's say, oh man, I really need all this redstone. So I take it all out, go use it, yada, yada, yada. I come back, dump it into the system. Well, let's take a look. Oh, we still have 19 of 63 types. And that's because we're using the storage bus, which sends the items straight back in here because priority says send to here first, take from here first. Hope that makes sense. We're just talking about practical uses right now. We'll get into how the machines work and what we're using and yada, 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 all that stuff, how to craft it. So that is essentially our setup here. We have the item storage cells to store everything that is not currently on the wall of materials, as we'll call it. So anything like, for example, dielectric paste. That's not over here on the wall, yet I have it in the cell, and so I have it available to craft with. And obviously this makes crafting pretty much anything a lot easier because I just have access to a lot more items. I can use all 8,000 of my Inferium Essence from my drawer without having to drop it all into my inventory, run to a crafting table, come back, grab another 2,000, run, you know. Now I can access all 8,000 from right here. All right, so the setup that we have here, how are we using it? What is actually powering it? How does it work, essentially? Well, as mentioned, the ME drive is purchasable using your advanced storage bugs. So if you come to catalog, boom, ME drive. You can also purchase, and you will need to purchase, an ME item cell housing. This is actually what you use to combine with your storage components to give you your storage cells. Again, since upgrading is so easy until you get to 256, I recommend using 64K because they can hold a lot of items and will take you quite some time to truly fill up. So there's the disk drive. You take your storage cells of any kind, be them fluid or item or whatever, and you put them in the drive. You can see them visually on the front. When they're green, they're completely empty. When they're blue, they're partially filled. And when they're red, they are completely filled. So it's a good quick little overview to see where you're standing at. There are more slots down there, but I've just decided to incorporate it here to try and line up with everything outside. Now, the ME drive as well as the ME crafting table both take power. They take EFE or whatever, you know. They take some form of power, including the storage bus. Storage bus also takes power. However, we can generate free power, relatively free power, and infinitely so using the crystal resonance generator. These things typically produce enough power to get your system going without needing to have an energy acceptor plus a whole power setup, because typically using an ME drive and all this stuff does not cost a whole lot of power. It just costs some. So you can make one of these crystal resonance generator, which is pretty easy. Copper, iron, charged circ quartz, and a fluix blocks, which you can use fluix crystals for. Again, fluix crystals you can get from the fluix essence that it told you how to make and grow and all that stuff in the quest book. And it will give you 6. So again, that's why I call it kind of a base ingredient for a lot of recipes. So the crystal resonance generator, here it is, completely free power. You don't have to insert coal or anything like that into it. However, you can also only have one of these per system. So if I try to place down another one of these to provide more power, it's just not going to work. It's absolutely not going to work. So that is how everything is powered over here. The crafting terminal, I hope it's pretty self-explanatory, but we'll still go into it. It allows you to access all of your items from your storage, right? So we have the drive that is part of our storage. However, we also have this storage controller, thanks to the storage bus, as part of our storage system. Now, if you ever get confused with A2 and you're like, well, I don't know what this is, I don't know what that is. As you hover over items, you can see this is the ME storage bus. Hold G to open guide. It says hold G. And then it goes into discussing essentially what it does, how to use it, priority, filtering, settings, how to upgrade it, and even its standard recipe, right? So that's pretty nice. Storage bus, if you want to read about it, you know, this is available on your Modpack as well, but essentially it just turns the inventory it's touching into network storage. So it's counting that little storage controller over there, just as it would item storage cell, right? So that's the crystal resonance generator, whatever the heck it's called. That's how it works. That's what it's used for. Just essentially being a little cheap. That's fine. We all want to be a little cheap in our lives at some point, right? Okay. Then, in order to attach the storage bus, I have this Fluix glass cable. Now, the storage bus, technically, like I said, does need power. However, since it's connected through the glass cables, it's receiving that power. It's also what's connecting the storage controller to the crafting table and to the disk drive and everything else that we're using over here. So all that, like I said, Applied Energistics, very nifty. I probably should have gotten into it a little sooner because it would have made automating mystical agriculture easier. But, you know, you kind of got to do both simultaneously. Sorry, my God. Oh. Right, sorry about that. I pressed 0 to mute myself because I was yawning. And then as I did, it crashed the game. So anyways, I hope all of that makes sense with Applied Energistics too. The only thing I didn't go through was some of the crafting recipes, like to get to the ME crafting terminal, you need a calculation processor, which we went over, crafting table, which you know how to make, and an ME terminal. The ME terminal can be made using formation core, annihilation core, and an illuminated panel. Formation core is pretty simple. Logic processor, Fluix dust, which we already know how to make, right? Fluix essence. And certs quartz. It can be charged, but again, it doesn't have to. If you see this little asterisk and you see certs quartz, it means it will take either charged or uncharged. Also, the asterisk just typically means that it takes more than just the item that it's displaying, and if you hover over it, it'll show you all of them. Furthermore, if you click on it, it'll give you a full detailed list where you can actually go in, click on it, figure out how to make it. So, formation core, pretty simple. You get 2 per recipe. Where is that? Here we are. The annihilation core is very similar. Fluix, logic, and nether quartz, and again, you get 2. So that's that. Now for the illuminated panel. Every time you make this recipe, you will be making 3 illuminated panels at once. You'll need glowstone, redstone, and iron. All of those pretty easy, self-explanatory. You'll also need some quartz glass. Now this glass can be made using certs quartz dust and glass blocks. Certs quartz dust, you can either use certs quartz essence for and just make it directly, or you can crush down your certs quartz in a crusher. Either way works, both are fun. Obviously, this one's a little quicker if you already have it set up in mystical agriculture and your farm is moving through it pretty quickly, right? So that's how we get to the illuminated panels. And then, of course, you turn the panel into the terminal and you turn the terminal into the crafting terminal. Now, in the future, we'll be making this wireless terminal so we can make a wireless crafting terminal, because that is really a beautiful thing with AE2, being able to access all of your storage from over here, on top of that hill over there, or even in the Nether, which we will be getting into in the future. So, I know as far as aesthetics go, we've been kind of lacking on the progress that we've been making, but I feel like we make progress in strides kind of with aesthetics. We do a lot at a little, or a lot in a little amount of time, and then we don't do a lot for a long amount of time. Now, that being said, we did kind of finish this little structure off, which may end up getting extended upwards as we just continue to get into mystical agriculture and have more and more essences sort of bleeding through, right? And what I really want to do in between episodes, one, I think I want to get into some more power, because I am kind of tired of just throwing down all these solar generators everywhere. Y'all know me, I like easy power. And so far, the solar generators are easy. But every time I want more power or want another source of power, I have to go make a battery, go charge the battery, and then go sell it in the market. It's kind of a tedious process for me personally, so what I really want to do is get into the reactors. This is going to take some elite power bucks, however, and of course the elite power bucks, we need the elite power license and blazing capacitors, and to get this, we need more blazing capacitors, steel, and paper. Okay, so how do we get the blazing capacitors? Well, we need blazing crystal from Power. Blazing crystal can be made using blaze rods. You can add power bucks if you want to get, you know, more bang for your buck. Get it? Anyways, you don't absolutely have to. You can also use blaze powder. Oh, hold on. Sorry, I just lost all train of thought. I got a phone call from my wife, so we were discussing kids. Let's take a snooze because it is that time. What was that? Oh man, what was I discussing? Oh, blazing capacitors. Yes, to get into elite power, so we can move forward with power as our source of power. So, blazing crystals, long story short, we're going to have to go get some mother flippin' blazes, right? That's the end all be all. We need blazes. Now, I believe, although I don't know for sure, so maybe you test this yourself in creative before doing this. I've not taken the time to test it in this mod pack. But in some mod packs, you can silk touch monster spawners and then use spawn eggs on those monster spawners to set whatever spawn you want. That being said, there is a spawner in mystical agriculture as well, which kind of similar concept. You put in the spawn egg and then it, you know, spawns that creature at whatever rates. And you can, of course, put in the machine upgrades from the rest of mystical agriculture to speed it up and so on and so forth. So this may end up being what we do for future animals. I'm thinking like pigs or cows or something, because we need a lot of passive creatures as well. But yeah, I mean, this says interact with spawn eggs, sets mob type, so I'm assuming we can pick it up. And the eggs, I know we can make them some way. I'm just trying to find like a basic egg so it's not got some weird complicated ass recipe. Let's do cow egg. So yeah, here in the Solium spawner, you can put in essence. And apparently in summoning, you can put in dirt. What? How do you make this? What? Okay, so I mean, that's a really easy way to get a spawn egg, obviously. And then you just need a spawner, which is what we're going to be covering now, right? So, sawdust can be obtained from using a precision sawmill, putting in oak logs, listening to a terribly loud sound for who only knows. I guess we could go to this and we could muffle it so we don't have to listen to it. But it only has a % chance of coming, right? 25%. So you're going to have to go through quite a bit of logs to get this. What you can do is put it into a little square like this and you get a cardboard box. Woo! Now, what's a cardboard box good for? Storing large amounts of junk that then goes into your utility closet and you never see from or hear of again for the next 2 years until you finally go and clean it out and then realize that's where that set of tongs went that you've been looking for since last summer. But in a Minecraft sense, it allows you to transport items, allows you to encase blocks, essentially, rather, instead of items, I should use blocks, to where you can move them, take the cardboard box off, and oh, look at that, still the same log. Now, you can also do this with blocks that you can't typically move or pick up, like spawners, for example, or machines. So if I wanted to pick up this enrichment chamber with everything inside of it, all of its upgrades and all that, throw the cardboard box on there and break it down. Throw the cardboard box over here and oh, look at that. It's even set up in the same direction. So cardboard box is pretty actually useful and something that I oftentimes forget in the mechanism, because you have all these machines and then you have a little cardboard box and it's like, it just seems a little out of place. The usage is very in place, but it being a cardboard box made of sawdust, well, I don't know. I guess cardboard is typically made of wood-like products, right? Anyways, we're going to go into the Nether. First, I'm going to charge up my backpack with our little chemical tank here that we were using last episode, or that we were starting to get filled up last episode. I wish there was a way to more quickly. I wish there was a way to transfer the hydrogen a little bit faster, because it does take a little bit. We don't need that much. I just don't want to be halfway on E whenever I go into the Nether and decide to try and fly over some lava, right? That just doesn't feel like good sense to me. So there we go. We'll throw that back up there. We have our jetpack on. We will want, I believe, a fresh shield because if I remember correctly, I don't even know. Oh yeah, our shield's pretty busted up. So let's get some iron real quick. We might have some that was smelted already down here. Let's see. Aha. Some wood. We have plenty of wood. And bada bing, bada boom. A shield for me. Now, this should be a relatively short trip because if I remember correctly, the blaze spawner's pretty near the entrance of our portal here. We have the cardboard box ready to go. Have my shield on. Let's put this somewhere over here. And that there, that there, that. Let's get some kind of blocks to use as some kind of defensive maneuvers if need be. All right, in we go to the Nether. Now, let me see. So there's one this way and there's one that way. Which one did I discover last time? Was it this one over here? I really should have put a marker on it because I remember I was like, oh, look, there it is. It's so close. And we also found a spawner. Okay, so it was not this one. Had to be the other one because this one doesn't have a spawner on display here. All right, so let's go the other way, I suppose. This way. Uh-huh. There it is. Cardboard box at the ready. I have visuals on the spawner. I'm going in. Dodge. And run. Oh, it feels so cheap. It's okay. I'm not done with my cheapness. All right, so we have a blaze spawner. Right on. Be careful where we place this, right? More than likely in between episodes, I will get this set down somewhere because we're going to want some like lava to pull the blazes down and in and all that kind of stuff, right? We don't have... Oh, boy, 3 pages of it. Let's see. Structural witherproof. Really? Mystical Agriculture has witherproof glass. Okay, so I guess this is what we'll be making for the... Oh, okay, well, you know, that's not so bad. Okay. So I guess we'll look at that in the future. But for our blazes, we just are going to need like a lava setup, a little spawner. I don't know where I want to put that at. What do y'all think? We have so much room. I definitely don't want to put it attached to the main base. That just seems like not smart. I really like the way our base kind of looks here. So should I maybe put it over here on this other coast side? So we already have a bridge over there. Or should I put it behind the Nether somewhere since it's Nether related? Kind of like the idea of putting it on this shore over here, kinda. Or just in general, putting it somewhere over there. Yeah, we'll probably do something like that. All right. So well, I guess we could do the elite power license. Let me see. Is this going to put me on a whole nother rabbit hole is essentially what I'm... Okay, yeah, it is. Because I'm going to get the reactors and I'm going to want more elite. What do you... It's blazing capacitors makes 3, so either 4 or 2 makes 2 elite power bucks. We're going to need 36 of these reactors, so we'll need this 9 times. 9 times 2 is 18, so we'll need 18 of these things, which means we'll roughly need, on the high end, if we need 18 times 4 is like 72 on the low end, 18 times 2 is 36. So anywhere from 36 to 72 blazing capacitors to get enough elite power bucks to get us to the reactors. And uranite, it can't, isn't this uranite essence, is it tier 5? And uranium, there's no way for us to turn this into uranite, no? No. What about this uranite stuff here? Is there no way to make that poor? No? Okay. Raw uranite? Okay, so you can't take raw uranium, turn it into raw uranite, and then turn that raw uranite into normal uranite. But that seems a little complicated, given I could probably also just make these. It's just some supremium. It's not too bad. We can make supremium. All right, so we'll probably make uranite seeds then as well, so we can power our reactors. So that is something that will probably happen in between episodes. Ooh, or we could put the blaze spawner over here. This looks kind of cool. It is kind of tucked away from the base. Looks kind of nifty down there. That may be what we do. So, ladies and gentlemen, even though I know this is also going to be a bit of a shorter episode, and we've kind of had a lot of those here recently, I am going to go ahead and call the episode here. Otherwise, we're going to start getting into, I'm going to rabbit hole into a whole nother project and all that stuff, and then the video gets really long. So instead of doing that, we are going to call it here. So thanks everybody for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If so, be sure to leave a like down below. Comment in the comment section. Oh. Well, that's not where I wanted to land. Comment in the comment section if you have any odd tidbits, extra tips, or pieces of advice that may be useful for me or anyone else watching the series. Of course, leave comments if you have any questions, or need help or tips or anything dealing with any of the mods or this mod pack or anything in general. I try to read, respond, and engage with you guys and gals. Of course, subscribe if you're new here and you want to see more awesome content from yours truly. Share this out with friends, family, strangers down the street, and random people you might meet just pretty much anywhere. Bowling alley, supermarket, parking lot. I don't really recommend trying to meet strangers in a parking lot. They don't often take too well to that kind of interaction. Anyways, like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. As per the usual, I do hope you all stay safe, stay awesome, and stay crafting. Until next time, you beautiful, beautiful people, peace out.